We're taking a deep dive into ballot questions 3 and 4 on the Massachusetts ballot. In a minute, I'll be joined by a nonpartisan researcher who will help us cut through the spin from the yes and no campaigns and work out what will really happen if these measures are implemented. But first, let's take a look at the basics, courtesy of Soraya Wintersmith.
What would question 3 on the Massachusetts ballot do? Question 3 would change the state's alcohol licensing rules in a few different ways. First, it would gradually double the number of liquor licenses a single retailer can have for its chain of stores, going from the current 9 to 18 by the year 2031. Second, it would limit the so-called all-encompassing licenses to 7. So if a retailer wants to sell beer, wine, and hard liquor, it could only do that at 7 of its 18 locations, and that's assuming it got the maximum number of licenses. Third, it would ban self-checkout for alcohol purchases, so only face-to-face transactions. Fourth, it would make fines more expensive for retailers that sell things other than alcohol if they violate state law. And last but not least, it would let people use out-of-state licenses as proof of age to buy alcohol. So a yes vote would make all of those changes I just outlined, and a no vote keeps things as they are now. Now, supporters say this is a compromise measure. It ensures packies can keep selling alcohol into the foreseeable future, while also acknowledging that the public wants the convenience of buying alcohol in different places, like grocery stores and convenience stores. Opponents argue the changes do little to promote real competition or consumer choice, and that the changed fines would unfairly penalize retailers that sell things other than alcohol. They also say this is just a band-aid that doesn't do enough on other aspects of liquor license reform, like license quotas and local oversight rules. And to that end, question 3, if it does pass and the laws do change, cities and towns still get the final say over who gets a liquor license in their jurisdiction. So, if you want retailers to potentially have more opportunities to sell liquor, to limit combo beer and liquor licenses, to ban self-checkout for alcohol, to charge stores that sell things beyond alcohol more if they're fined, and to let people use out-of-state IDs to buy alcohol, you vote yes on question 3. If you want things to stay just as they are now, you vote no.
That was Soraya Wintersmith reporting. Evan Horowitz, the Executive Director of Tufts Nonpartisan Center for State Policy Analysis, joins me now. Evan, thanks for being here again.
It's great to be here with you.
So what...
This is democracy at its best.
That's us. We saw Soraya's gloss and GBH's gloss on this ballot question, GBH News. Is there anything that you would draw to the fore or that maybe you would add that we didn't pick up on in there?
One thing that's hard to assess from these kind of summaries is like, how big a deal is this? You know, is this a really big deal? Is it going to mean people drinking more, have access to more alcohol? And, you know, the short answer to that is like, no, this is not a big deal, right? This is not really going to change the landscape of alcohol consumption in the state or the availability of alcohol. That's just not what this is about. And one way you know this is that the big alcohol distributors, the people who sell, they don't care. They're not in this spending big money on yes or no. Like, that's just not what this is about.
So who is spending big money on yes and no? If the distributors don't really care, who does?
Well, there's actually not a lot of big money in this at all. This is one of the kind of smaller money issues. But it's the kind of package stores, the independent liquor stores, they're sort of behind it because they think of it as a kind of compromise position. And the chain stores, they're sort of against it because even though they might get more beer and wine licenses out of it, it's not as many as they want and they think they can do better.
When you say chain stores, are we talking grocery stores that might want to sell or big retailers like Total Wine and whatever they're called?
I was thinking more
liquors?
like the kind of Cumberland Farms and the grocery store types. The wine and spirit stores are also there. They also feel like this is not great for them. But either way, these are small changes, and we're going to see this again. Like, this is not the final word. Voters will vote on this. There will be another push for a ballot question on this in 2 years. Okay,
so while people are watching this show tonight, I may be watching and enjoying a delicious beer. I enjoy, you know, a tasty beer on occasion.
Something other than an IPA.
Yes, it's nice to get out of that box on every now and then. So if I want to have more variety, if I, you know, go to my local liquor store and I think sometimes this is the same stuff. I've tried all this stuff before. Why don't they have new things? How should I vote on this?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
No. You can't vote on that basis, right?
Okay.
It's really not going to change your ability to get access to like a wider variety of products. That's not going to happen. I think if your thinking is like, actually, there's just like one Cumberland Farm down the street, or there's one place down the street that I know they really want it, and I know my town is open to new liquor license, beer and wine licenses, maybe that's a yes, but it's a really, really rare circumstance that the towns control this. not the state licenses.
I think I know the answer to this question based on everything you've said, but also no difference when it comes to price, if I want to be able to maybe pay nothing?
No. See, this is nice because
love
like
it.
some of these are high stakes questions and you have to, and the nice thing about this is you can spend time thinking about it, but it's a relatively low stakes question. You shouldn't spend too much time thinking about it.
All right, let's move on to a much higher stakes question. Ballot question 4, which will determine whether a new law that will let unauthorized immigrants get driver's licenses starting next year is going to stay on the books. I put together an explainer on this. Let's take a look and then come back and talk about it. What will question 4 on the Massachusetts ballot do? Question 4 will decide the fate of a new state law that would let immigrants get a driver's license, even if they don't have permanent legal status. They just have to pass a test and provide documents proving their identity and residency. A yes vote would let that expanded license access start in July. A no vote would stop the law from going into effect, meaning no licenses for immigrants who don't have permanent legal status. The legislature passed the law a few months ago over a veto from Governor Charlie Baker, and its supporters say giving more immigrants access to licenses will help people who are already here do essential things like driving to work and school. They also say it'll increase public safety, citing reduced hit-and-run rates in states with similar laws and support from dozens of local police chiefs. The law's opponents say it extends a crucial privilege to people who don't deserve it. They also say the RMV doesn't have the expertise to vet documents from around the world. And they warn that because Massachusetts automatically registers driver's license applicants to vote, the new law could result in people who shouldn't be able to vote casting ballots. For the record, the law says the RMV and Secretary of State shall, quote, establish procedures and may promulgate regulations to make sure that doesn't happen, but it doesn't say what they'll be. So, if you want immigrants without permanent legal status to be able to get a driver's license, vote yes on question 4. And if you don't want them to get one, vote no. Evan Horowitz, let's start by talking about the safety piece, which is an argument that the proponents are really focused on as we head down the home stretch. Is there evidence, based on what's happened in other states, similar moves, that allowing unauthorized immigrants to get driver's licenses, if they can provide documentation, that it will increase public safety? There's
some limited evidence there, so I think you should have some reasonable expectation that there's some improvement in safety, mostly on the reduction in things like hit-and-run accidents. Not because there are fewer hits, but because there are fewer runs. You can imagine that someone's here who is driving illegally because they don't have a license. And lots of these people are already driving, right? If you're here as an unauthorized immigrant, you still have to live your daily life in Massachusetts, and that's hard to do without driving, so they're driving. But you can imagine if you get into a fender bender, you might not stick around because you don't want to get embroiled with police, possibly deportation issues, so you take off. This could change that. So the safety issues, think of it there, it's more kind of tracking and enforcement. Total accidents, probably not much of a change.
Just to highlight that, so there isn't evidence based on other states that by getting to know the rules of the road, by being brought into our system, that therefore there will be fewer accidents?
No, in fact, people looking at this find basically no change in kind of total accidents, but more people have insurance, so that's good. There are some reasons to embrace it on the safety side, but not because it makes the road safer in terms of total accidents.
One of the big objections, as you know from people who don't like this new law, is they say that it's going to create a real chance that people who shouldn't be voting will be able to vote. Is that a risk?
No. This is one of these things we spend a lot of time looking into. We talk to folks in other states. There are a lot of other states already doing this, right? We would be the 17th state essentially doing this. So we're not the vanguard here as we are with some of the other ballot initiatives, question 2. This is a well-known thing. So you can call, as we did, folks at the DMV or in Secretary of State's offices in other states and say, hey, have you had any problems with this? And the answer is no, no. They find the rules, they make the implementation, they ensure that people can get licenses and not vote. And one good reason to think this is we already have people in the state who are eligible to get licenses and not vote.
Right.
We
green card holders,
green card holders,
permanent residents.
So it's not like we have to create a system for ensuring this. The system exists.
Just so I'm clear on this, in the states where you've been told this is not a problem, or the states that have told you that, are they states that do automatic voter registration via RMV transactions like we do? They are?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. The RMV screws things up on occasion. Earlier this year, some RMV employees were fired for giving 2,000 people who had not taken road tests driver's licenses. And they got caught and they got canned. But is that possibly, even if it's not going to happen automatically, like the Mass GOP has been saying, is it reasonable for some people who are concerned about this to say, yeah, but what if the RMV doesn't do its job right? Or what if the Secretary of State and the RMV don't actually follow through on this part of the law that says they're going to implement procedures to make sure that doesn't happen? Are those valid concerns, do you think?
I mean, they're already valid concerns because you could go in and give licenses to the wrong people or mishandle records. And so, yeah, do I think that's a unique reason to oppose this as opposed to any other RMV regulation? No, I don't think so. I do think there are concerns around kind of record maintenance and retention, right? Because one of the things that this will do is create a record of unauthorized immigrants in Massachusetts who go and get driver's licenses. And the RMV will have to hold and store and safeguard those records. The law requires them to safeguard those records and to do so in a way that doesn't say, hey, these people are not citizens. But it's not clear they have the systems really to do that and prevent leaking of this information or subpoenaing or maybe working with a future federal administration that's interested in tracking these people. So I think that's another risk.
Interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong here. My understanding is that the law allows the RMV to share that information on citizenship status with towns and cities if the point is making sure that voting is executed correctly and the people who shouldn't be able to vote don't vote. Am I correct about that?
So my read is the RMV is not actually going to identify citizenship status on these things. What it will identify is not eligible to vote. And so that record, is this person eligible to vote, is shareable in certain cases, but not are they citizens. And they might be 17. Right? There are other reasons you might not be eligible to vote. So it won't necessarily be a record of your legal status.
Governor Baker has said that the RMV doesn't have the expertise to vet all these different forms of identification that they're going to be looking at from pretty much every country imaginable. Is he right to be concerned about that?
So this is another question. We asked folks in DMVs in other states, and they said, no, this is a solvable problem, this is a manageable issue, especially when the universe of documents is relatively limited. It's not like you can bring any document in. At least one of these documents has to be either a foreign passport or a consular ID. So they're recognizable. You can get a book, like you get with driver's licenses. What do these things look like? And with some additional training, that seems like a manageable and solvable problem. Or the RMV is beyond incompetent. Like, if that problem can't be solved, then you have much deeper problems with the RMV that need to be solved.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think it does, yeah. The governor and other opponents have also said, hey, wait a second, other states that have allowed undocumented immigrants to get licenses, give them a different kind of ID. They don't give them the same license that everyone else has. Is that true?
I think that varies. There are 16 cases. I think it varies. But I think there are other states that do it the way we do. That is, we have a federal ID, the Real ID program. We have a non-federal kind of state ID program. And bringing unauthorized immigrants into that non-federal state ID program is actually a very smooth way to implement this because it ensures that they can participate in a license program. They can get a license from the state. And that license doesn't scream, hey, you're in this country illegally. Right? It doesn't scream that. It says, no, you're just one of these people who decided to get a state license without a Real ID. So in some ways, I think that's actually the preferable divide. And
Okay, Evan Horowitz, thank you for all of this. I'm going to have to rewatch our conversation because there's a ton of stuff here I need to make sure I'm
Well, look, if you want to talk
correctly.
more, you can always give me a call. I'm happy to share.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it. Evan Horowitz, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Adam.
You can find last week's episode covering questions 1 and 2 and more GBH News coverage of the 2022 ballot initiatives on our website, gbhnews.org.